Hope everyone's well. We're just about to start. We're just starting our meeting just now. I think we've got a couple more people just joining. But this morning we're running through the upgrade options for those customers on Business Central 14 on premise and those customers in older versions of Navision. Join me today. My name's Lee Ping. I'm one of the account managers at KIK, and with me I've got my colleague Jax Taylor, who's going to be presenting the demonstration this morning. So we're going to be running through about 10 slides first, and before we get into the demonstration. So I'll just get started and we'll just flick through. So the first slide is just really just to talk about, I know we've got some customers who have just moved over to KIK. So KIK ICT Group are one of the UK's leading IT providers. We've got probably about 50 Dynamics sort of consultants, project managers, support staff, sales teams, all in this one group of individuals who look after Dynamics. As well as Dynamics, we have technical divisions, info divisions and communication divisions. We were founded in 2015 and we've grown through acquisition. So you can see here that through the years up to 2025, the sort of different acquisitions we've taken to become one of the UK's largest providers of Dynamic solutions. So today's agenda, we'll spend about an hour just running through. We're going to just look at why upgrade and key differences, upgrade options, some benefit examples. We'll go into the demonstration and we'll have some Q&A at the end. So I'm not sure if everyone's seen Business Central Dynamics before. Obviously everyone's familiar with Navision. So the capabilities of Dynamics 365 is very broad. Everyone who is moving from or has Navision, you'll still have the same fundamental general ledger, dimensions, cash flow forecast, fixed assets, sales invoicing, purchase invoicing, etc., etc. As you can see, there's a lot of different capabilities here. And the versions of Navision you had to buy granular modules, so you would only buy the modules that you maybe had been looking for at the time. With Business Central, you get access to all these modules based on your license. So with a full Essentials license, you get everything you can see here, except manufacturing and service management. With the Premium Edition, you get these two included. Underlying all these modules, you've also got, you'll see some of these small icons here. These are Copilot icons. So it's just showing you that there's some inbuilt AI capability in the system. So out of the box, Dynamics 365 Business Central is a fully stacked, integrated, AI-powered product. So you've got Business Central at the top here, integrated. It's full integrated into Excel, Word, Teams, Outlook, SharePoint. You have all the Power Platform tools such as Power BI, Power Automate, and this all sits on the Microsoft Azure cloud. So when you look at this, you don't get any other vendor in the market which offers you the breadth of integrations into this Microsoft ecosystem which Microsoft provide. Backing that up, we've got Copilot, as I said, with the agentic ecosystem. The latest version of Business Central Cloud has Copilot analysts, assistants, chatting with Copilot, bank account reconciliations. You have the agents who are more autonomous, so you can interact with them in terms of ordering, payables agents, which is for OCR invoicing. And in the next release, which Jax will discuss, there's more agents coming out, such as expense agents. And all of this is extended with actual Copilot itself, so the ecosystem is very, very integrated. So with Dynamics 365 Business Central, how do you upgrade? What options do you have? The two familiar options for customers are, the first one is like for like. So customers will want to carry forward all their existing data, and their existing customizations development are brought into what we call AL extensions. You bring all your history, all your core processing remains the same, and all your development pretty much remains the same. So you're doing a like for like upgrade. However, we have customers who don't need this approach. They're looking for a more clean start. They want a fresh Business Central implementation. They want to look at the standard functionality and use how much of that standard functionality is available within Business Central. So their customizations are either redesigned or actually replaced with standard functionality. So it gives customers an option on how they want to approach the upgrade. We have a list of key customers, such as we've got different sectors who use Business Central, from hospitality to healthcare to obviously public charities. We've got the likes of Scottish Woodlands, Itsu, Denham, Ambridge. Whole list of customers have made that journey from Navision into the cloud. One second, we'll just next screen. So the question is, why change? Why now? Well, the legacy Navan environments are increasingly costly to maintain. So the costs for keeping the enhancements, working on the servers, the older versions are working on older servers, upgrades, they'll increase costs through time. And obviously have limited scalability compared to the existing cloud platforms. End of support timelines are at a risk. So those in 2017 versions of Navision, the extended support ends in 2027. Those in older versions, BC14, extended support has run out, although obviously the resellers will still support on best endeavours. You don't get the cloud adoption is now standard across finance and operations, and organisations want better remote access. There are common concerns with upgrading from customizations. What happens to them? Well, as per the previous slide, we can change these into what we call extensions. The product's evergreen, so Microsoft give you 2 major updates a year called wave releases, and these extensions can be unplugged, the core system upgraded, and then replugged back in to ensure that the upgrades are successful. And with Kik's proactive service, we manage that for you. As I said, all your data can be converted, or you can do a re-implementation. And with Microsoft's backing, the system it's got 2-factor authentication. And Microsoft spends hundreds of millions of pounds a year to making sure the cloud is 100% secure. Just a couple of customers from Kik who've made the journey. So every customer's got a challenge. There's a journey to be made, and there's going to be an impact. Ambridge Hospitality was operating Nav on-premise and Business Central, limitations and efficiencies. They wanted to take the journey, so we worked with Kik to begin that transformation to the cloud, to modernise the financial process through cloud adoption. And the impact was that they've got improved efficiency and effectiveness across the finance operations. And we've got a comment there that how well this has worked for them in regards to the process, the journey, and it's made a huge difference to how they work. And one last customer, just to mention, we've got a customer recently upgraded. This is a typical size of customer for Kik. They're running a heavily customised on-premise version of Nav, inefficient, reliant on spreadsheets. The journey was to take them through a discovery, look at the new fundamentals and functionalities in Business Central. They chose a clean re-implementation, which means they've now got reduced dependencies on spreadsheets and manual data handling. They now operate a modern cloud finance-based system, which is easier to manage and built to scale. And as I said, when we work through projects with Kik, we have discovery workshops, we scope, we deploy your project through our project management methodology, we transition you, and we obviously hand over and we support all the systems as we go live. Okay, we're now going to just look at the Business Central demonstration with Jax. So Jax is just going to run through some of these topics. You're going to look at the system look and feel, so you can see, how you navigate through the system, discuss the integrations, discuss a bit of reporting, querying, examples in cash flow forecasting, bank recs, integration capabilities, the agentic and AI co-pilots. So I'll hand over you to Jax. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Lee. I'm just going to share my screen. So I hope everyone's enjoying this so far. So my name is Jack. I'm Kick's Business Central pre-sales consultant. I have a background in implementing Business Central solutions, and I now sit alongside the sales team, assisting with technical sales. So as Lee says, I'm just going to guide you through some of the main advantages that you will see with a move to Business Central SaaS. I just want you to have a sense of what the system's like. So we're going to start by having a look at sort of the look and feel of the system and how it's set up and what the dashboards look like, and what your experience would be if you were to log onto the system. So this is a demo environment which I've set up for the purposes of this demonstration, and here is a typical dashboard for somebody who would work in finance. So we can see here we have various options for different widgets. We've got different actions. We've got different bookmarks. We also have the our reports and Power BI embedded within Business Central, which allows for much more of a dashboard style management. So this obviously is the look that somebody involved in finance who's heavily involved in the system, who's using lots of the system, would see. It's also worth noticing that we can customize this to a large extent. So where there are bookmarks which we want to see, where there are things which we want to reveal, we can do this, and a user can change the way that they view the system and the way that it's set up to suit their needs. So this can be controlled. This can be controlled centrally. This can be set for a whole group of users and then pushed out to them. Users can have the ability to update it themselves, or this can be turned off, and updates can be rolled out to ensure that the system looks consistent across your user interfaces as desired. I wanted to give you an example of a much simplified version of a dashboard. So Business Central is a role-based system. So this would be the role that which has been set here is for a team member. So somebody who's a team member is essentially, in this example, logging into the system, and all they're looking at is to use self-service capabilities around submitting their timesheets and looking for whether there have been approvals or if they need to also approve any timesheets within the company. So this allows for just a very simple interaction with the system, and there's no noise, there's nothing which is confusing, and there's no access to any parts of the system which they don't require. So moving through the system is very intuitive. So we can move through. We can have lots of save filters down the left-hand side, depending on what we're wanting to see. We've got information panes on the right-hand side. Again, we can power these using Power BI, and we have quite a few options for widgets, so we can easily delve into the ongoing activities related to a customer, and we can continue drilling down and looking through all of these. We have lots of statistics on the right hand side, which we can continue to drill down into these. We can have a look at the specific documents. We can have a look at anything related to the tracking of those orders. But the whole time, because we're stacking the windows, it's very intuitive to then just click back through the application without having to use, say, the back arrow, which you often have to with older systems in the browser. So additionally, in addition to the so our bookmarks and the way that we have this set up, we also have very intuitive search functionality. So if we were to look for reconciliation, for example, this goes beyond just having to know what the page would look like, and it actually will then make suggestions based on the contents of each page or actions or reports. So there's no longer the need, as you have in some systems and as you did previously in Business Central, to know exactly what you're looking for and what the name of it was. And if you didn't get it exactly, then it wouldn't appear. So the search has now become very intuitive. Also, as Lee mentioned, there is a lot of Copilot which is sat within the system. So AI is used in lots of different ways in Business Central. But I think what Microsoft have done exceptionally well is they've had the ability to put tools in the hands of the AI. So this is just a simple example, is having this chat box. So this all comes with your license with Business Central. So as you can see here, this can be used to look up. It could be used to retrieve data. It could be used to explain how to do processes. So if I was to ask it, how do I receive a purchase order, it would be able to go away and then give me a step-by-step as to how we would use this. This is exceptionally useful as well when you have early user adoption, especially if you've made a change, if you're using a considerably more modern system by implementing Business Central. This will work to then help users to understand exactly what they need to do and have on-hand help the entire time without having to then go and look through a whole host of Microsoft documentation or even contact support to get help. It's there on hand the entire time. So I just want to give a sense, as Lee said, of how large and wide this system is. So these are all the different areas which this touches. So it goes far beyond just being sort of a finance system. As you'll know, it has considerable capabilities for warehousing and inventory, has considerable capabilities for manufacturing. There's also other areas which you may not hear about as much, such as advanced project accounting, subscription billing. There's also sales and marketing to provide a CRM style management system, all within Business Central. So Business Central truly is an ERP system, and it truly can cover a large range of processes all in one place. Final thing to mention on this as well is that Business Central is exceptionally extendable. So if we look at our extension management here, this will give you an idea of all the different types of extensions which we can add onto it. So Microsoft actually has an app source, so everything within here is vetted, and Microsoft have approved this. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of extensions and from ISVs, so independent software vendors, which allow you to extend the system to carry out specific functionality. There are some ISVs that Kik work with, we have close partnerships with, to provide advanced capabilities in, for example, in expense management or in document OCR scanning. So by having this app source, it opens up a huge possibility to extend the functionality of the base system. Okay, so next I'm going to move on to talk about the Microsoft integration. So as being part of the Microsoft house, Business Central is linked in with all your other Microsoft applications. So in particular, Excel, of course, being a table-based application, then Excel is incredibly interlinked because it will work just to pull the tables out. So as you can see here, we can open things in Excel, we can edit in Excel, which I'll show you as well, which allows a two-way connection to Excel to allow data to be pushed back in. Additionally, also we have a Teams integration as well, which would allow us, if we were looking at a specific record, if we were looking at something and we wanted to then send that to somebody within the organization as part of a conversation about for investigating, say, an ongoing invoice, or there's issues with something, being able to then use that Teams link to point that person in the exact direction they need to look is exceptionally helpful. So if we were to open this up in Excel, it will take this, it will pull it out, and then it will reflect that back to us here. Also worth noting that this can be linked into your OneDrive as well, if you want to hold these for future reference. So this is just an example of pulling that out into Excel, sort of without having that two-way integration. A great use of the two-way integration would be, for example, if we're building up a journal. So rather than having to do all of that within the user interface, we can put that out into Excel. And essentially what this will do is it will open up an inbuilt Excel connector, which is opening on the right-hand side now. And this data connector, again, comes as part of your license, but will allow you to make changes within Excel, which are then pushed back into Business Central. Also worth noting that there's error handling happens at the point of entry from here. So if someone were to put something in which was incorrect, wasn't validated, such incorrect posting code, dimension, or an amount which was wrong for the type of transaction they were doing, then that would essentially stop it from here. So we can make updates here, and then we can publish those back, and then that allows us to then update what is then in Business Central. So then if we were to flick on something else and then come back to it, we should see that this has actually changed from 300 to 400 in line with what we've done here. So this gives a great, whilst obviously we want people to work as much as they can on the system, but Excel is a fantastic tool for data entry. It's a fantastic tool for analysis. This can also work because it allows us to refresh and pull data as well. So rather than having to use sort of queries or and set up data feeds into our Excel sheet, we can actually just use this connector to pull them through. So again, significant value of having a BC SaaS product working on this. I also want to call attention to the fact that Power Automate is readily embedded in the system. Now, this is an exceptionally powerful tool which is built on the Power Platform, which will allow us to create custom flows. It allows us to trigger certain events based on other events. We could create complex approvals if required, or if certain system events happen, we can then trigger alerts to be sent. So, for example, if stock ran low on a particular SKU, then we could use Power Automate, could then link to send an SMS to the relevant person. So it can really connect your system to in Business Central to your outside systems. So these are some of the types of flows that we can have here. And these are quite simple to make. It's something which you could do in-house within the organization, and it's something which Kik are experts in as well. So this, again, is just ways of taking Business Central and being able to always expand on it. Is always something which you can be continually improving and making it align with your business processes, so to run your organization in the best way you possibly can. We also have a Outlook integration as well. So we can see here we have Business Central, which is embedded within Outlook. So here I have sent in an invoice for work which I'm undertaking, and then opening this pane on the right, that should be able to then give us some insights around it. So it understands that I'm both registered by contact as a vendor or customer. We can select into there, and then we can start to look at within Outlook. We can see statistics around the vendor. We can see what ongoing invoices or orders we have with that vendor. And it's also a way of verifying that we have that contact saved in the system, because if we don't, then we could create a new contact in Business Central directly from Outlook and associate it with a customer or vendor record, so that we ensuring that our contact management remains clean and that it's all correctly linked into the relevant customer or vendor record in the system. So as well, we can create documents directly from here if we wanted to as well. So this would allow us essentially to take a purchase invoice, and based on what we have, we can then enter all the information about that in Outlook, and then that will then update and push back into Business Central. Worth noting, all of these integrations that I'm showing, so Teams integration, Excel integration, Outlook integration, Power Automate, they all rely on users having the correct permissions in order to access the data or to undertake the action which you're trying to do. So it all does tie back to those granular permissions for users to ensure that security and access to data is consistent throughout the environment. Now going back here, so as we mentioned, Power BI is becoming increasingly used in organizations for reporting. It's exceptionally powerful, and it allows us to build up dashboards which we can then drill down through to provide a dashboard style management. The trend that we're seeing at the moment is this is becoming increasingly part of the way that organizations are running and how they're choosing to present their data. These ones which we're showing here are actually pre-built Business Central Power BI reports. So we can look through here, we can see all the different tabs along here. We can see the types of reports that we can produce. So we can have them both in the sense of having visuals and graphs and showing trends. But we can also produce sort of management style reports. We can produce the types of reports which should be used by sort of very in-depth analysis in the organization. These can also be done through Power BI. Another beauty of Power BI as well is that, so what we have here is these ones are the pre-built dashboards which we have in the system, but we just go to select report here. Once this loads, then we should be able to see that actually the Power BI reports which we present in the system don't necessarily have to be entirely Power BI reports built up of data in Business Central. So what we can actually do is we can present any dashboard which we produced elsewhere in the business for the purposes of reporting. And it doesn't have to only be Business Central. It doesn't only have to be Business Central data which is being used in these. So you can see here we have these are a whole host of different Power BI reports which we have across the organization, ones which have been built specifically for certain functions, for presenting certain bits of data. And these may take data feeds from other systems to build up the data model, which is then presented back in these reports. So you're not limited to only showing things which are in Business Central. So we have, but pre-built, we have different Power BI reports which come across finance, across sales, across purchases. As we can see here, this is relating more to our stock and item ledger. And Power BI as well has been used to present the sort of item forecasts, which we can see here. So it's showing sort of based on our sales and production, we'd be able to then view how this is going to fluctuate over time. And then that would link into what our expected sales would be. We see here like things around like the gross requirements. So we can see the specific areas, specific times when we know there's going to be greater requirement for certain items. And all this data can be driven off either the fact that they're components used in manufacturing, the fact that we have sales which are ongoing, which require these items to fulfill. And yeah, we also have here, we kind of have like manufacturing ones as well, so we can see stuff around capacity. But Microsoft are continually investing in producing these standard dashboards for users. So traditionally, this has been so creating dashboards and doing Power BI work has been a fairly costly and fairly time-consuming part of a system implementation. But actually, what we're seeing now is that increasingly these standard dashboards are being used, which is much minimizing the effort required to produce these. And actually having Power BI embedded within the system is a key advantage, because this gives you deep insights quickly. It gives you easy access to data. It's easy to understand in a visual style. And it doesn't require you to go looking in different places or to have different applications, different windows open in order to see this data which is being presented. So in addition to this, we also have so if we open up, say, our customer ledger entries, which we've got here, which is just loading, but essentially, so this will give us like an archive of all of the entries that we have in the system. Refresh that again. But traditionally, people have taken feeds off these types of data, so feeds off our general ledger, feeds off our customer ledger, for example, and then they have pulled this out into Excel to then do the analysis, to do their pivots as they desire. But what we have now is the ability to do these pivots on system. So we can then keep adding things into our rows. We can keep adding in values, and then we can produce our table like this. So this would show us by department what our outstanding amounts are on, so our remaining amount by department of who the different customers are, and then which months these transactions relate to. And we can essentially just continue building up these pivot tables, but it's all done on the system. This no longer needs to be done in Excel. So finding these analyses is much simpler and gives very powerful querying capabilities. So reducing the need to sort of produce lots of manual reports and have these constantly sending out to people. We can also have lots of different tabs open at the same time with these analysis. So we can come along and we can take these off. We can also, if we want to pull in data which is from a different ledger, or we want to pull in any custom fields which you may have in your current setup, but you bring in these up into Business Central, we can use this add columns from as a fairly new feature, which will essentially pull that data in and relate it to the record which you're looking at, so that you can have a cross-ledger view of the data in front of you. We also have the ability to ask the system in plain English, using Copilot to generate analysis for us. So if we're to ask it questions around, so this is asking which customers have spent less than the last quarter and the previous quarters, this can go away and it can produce so this is looking at our different customers, it's looking at why particularly ones in this quarter have spent less than in previous quarters. Seems to be a fair few number of refunds going in the demo data which I've got in the system. But just by asking in a clear English sentence using Copilot, we can then produce the analysis for us, meaning that anybody can come and they can query the data. They don't need to know specifically how to build up the pivots, although they are quite simple, and these will be produced for them in such a way that they can then look at the figures and understand potentially where action needs to be taken. So again, driving efficient decision making. These, of course, are two ways of producing our dashboard reports, but also looking at our querying. But of course, we have as a standard a huge number of reports in the system. There are hundreds of these which can be run, and these are your more sort of traditional style reports, which you recognize. So sort of your from financial side, your trial balance, your budgets, being able to run reports on goods handling and inventory, manufacturing, looking at, I think particularly looking at variances, things like that are important. Again, Power BI reports embedded throughout this entire area as well. So Microsoft continually investing in this and continually improving access to management data. Okay, so the next section which I wanted to touch on was around cash flow forecasting. So cash flow forecasting is obviously a critical part of the finance operations of any business, and it's important to understand how your cash flow is going to adjust over time. So traditionally, this has been done using sort of copies of budgets which are allocated using actuals, and then applying certain factors to it to change those figures in line with logic which is set by the organization. It can become very complicated, but it's often been a case of using logic to fill the gap which is there, because we can't have a view on ongoing transactions in the system and then translate those into effect on our cash flow. Whereas what we now have in Business Central through cash flow forecasting is the ability to create a cash flow forecast, and we can look at these from all these different factors which you see in front of you. So this is actually looking at what we have in terms of liquid funds, what ongoing receivables and purchases look like, what our ongoing sales look like, but also being able to pull through different factors such as fixed assets, looking at their disposals, such as what our budget is saying, what is our budget telling us, because that's also important to how that's going to affect cash flow, how our projects are affecting it, and VAT. But I wanted to call attention to the fact that this will also use elements of Azure AI. So this is the model sitting behind Business Central, and using this, providing it has enough historical data, and we're setting a tolerance as to how certain the AI model has to be before the entry is included, it will then produce some AI forecast for us as well. But it's important that we're remaining in control of this, and we're specifying how certain it needs to be before that can actually become a registered entry. So if we're to run this, we can see we have a huge number of different entries which are coming through. So we've got our liquid funds, which are looking specifically at our balance sheets associated with our bank accounts, our receivables, payables, ongoing orders. We can see ones which are due, overdue, VAT which is due, and then here we can see as well that we are predicting using the AI. We are using this to understand how our cash flow is going to be affected. So this could be things on the receivable side. So if we know that there's a customer who consistently pays late, then the Azure AI would be able to see that, and then would be able to adjust our expected receivables cash flow based on this logic. And that then allows us to produce something which is a bit more accurate. So once these are registered in, we can then go back and we can have a look at the statistics available, and it will essentially produce our cash flow like this. And of course, because the system is always fully drillable, we can then continue just to drill down through these. We can have a look at what these are, and we can take it all the way down to the source document which is affecting this, and then that allows us to have really good control and visibility over what different areas are being affected, are affecting the cash flow. We can also add manual expenses. So if the things which we cannot systemize for one reason or another, these can be added in manually to adjust the cash flow as well. We can hold multiple versions of cash flow, so we can have different logic which is being applied to these as well. These then will flow into our statement of cash flow, or we could use Power BI reporting to then extrapolate that information into something which is a bit more useful if required, or pull it into models to use for cross-organizational comparison, especially if other systems are in play. Okay, so going back to our initial company, and again, staying on the theme of Copilot and AI, I wanted to show you how simple it is to run bank account reconciliations on the system. So these traditionally have been something which we've always been doing in spreadsheets. They can become quite cumbersome. They can take days if there are any discrepancies. That can then become quite a lengthy process to investigate, and especially if you have things which you can't predict, such as bank charges and interest, which sit on our bank statement lines as well. The method of posting those through can be quite manual. So traditionally with bank account reconciliations, which is nothing new in Business Central, but traditionally you would have a more sort of mechanical matching process where it would look at various amounts, descriptions, we would assign a date tolerance, and then it would be able to match these up to some extent. But using this reconcile here, we can then use the Copilot here, which is saying, right, so we've auto matched these ones, so that's fine. Those are sort of the more mechanical match, but it's going a bit deeper than that. And it's saying, right, there are two lines which in particular we want you to have a look at, because we're proposing a many to one, and we want you to ensure that you're happy with the way that the allocation is working here. So it's going beyond just saying this matches that, this matches the other. It's actually intelligent enough to understand that for some various lines, which we have in the cash book, is actually equating to a single line in the bank statement. So this is very useful in when we have something like summarized payments. So based on that, we can say we keep that, and that's fine. And then that's just leaving us with, so if we were to show non-matched only, the only thing which we have left is a bank fees, which is often the case. This is often going to happen, which we can then transfer easily to a general journal, and then that will automate the account allocation for the bank feeds, and then posting through to the bank account ledger, allowing us to come back here and then match them off, completing our reconciliation and posting that reconciliation to the system, closing our cash book entries. So by using the Copilot AI, this traditionally quite lengthy and complicated process is something which has become significantly easier. Okay, so next thing that I want to touch on is just the integration capabilities. So, and there's sort of two sides to this always. So obviously the integrations which we have set up in an organization are exceptionally important. So the way that we do these in Business Central is wherever we can, we would use API to API integrations. And these are examples you can see over here. We've got the different APIs here. So these are so queries or segments of data or specific tables which we have decided we are going to surface. So we've surfaced these within Business Central for the purpose of creating API integrations. We can see that these relate to pages, and we've been able to pull these up so that using REST APIs we can then call data, and we can move data from place to place. If you are in an organization which has systems which do not have API capability, which will be which is very common, this also isn't an issue. We don't necessarily have to do it this way. At Kik, we are experts in integrations. We have a team of exceptionally talented and experienced developers who can create interfaces for something like a CSV output. We can have static file style transfers as well. So depending on what your integration capabilities are, they will be covered by Business Central. It won't only relate to API integrations, which only really work between more modern systems. So if you're going through your upgrade process and you're looking to then move these, if you're looking for that move into the cloud, but there's sort of understandable nervousness around your integration capabilities, we will be able to take these. We will be able to either recode them and recreate them if required, or if there's actually nothing wrong with the integration, then we can use, as Lee was mentioning earlier, use our upgrade process to bring this code up to Business Central standard. So there's kind of two sides to the integration. Like the first part, which people always seem to think is kind of the most important part, is the movement of data. Actually, the movement of data, in my mind, isn't the most important part at all. Moving data from one place to the other is actually relatively simple. The bit which is very important is these type code units which we have here. So you can see here we've got integration synchronization. So this is looking to sync up data which is coming in and process it correctly. So once the data is moved from system to system, that's only half the battle, if not less than half the battle. The most important part is how these are processed, and this is where the job queue comes in and our code units come in. So we will write these code units, which will allow us to then process that data which has come in such a way that it maps over and becomes relevant to the system which it's hitting. Because of course, even if you have an integration between two very similar systems, the way that which these are set up, especially if we consider potentially bespoke tables or fields which you've had configured, can vary. So ensuring this mapping is correct and the processing is done right is the key to making sure that the integration actually works. And this is where these code units, if you have an older system, if you have integrations that are running, you'll no doubt have these code units which are then processing that data. That work is not lost. These code units and could be providing they are of a good enough standard, or providing that we feel that they are correctly coded to modern standards, then we can bring these into Business Central and continue to process data in the same way. There's always going to obviously be some changes because of the sort of system architecture, but we can create sort of like for like processing capabilities on this. We also have an EDI tool called DataBridge as well, which is a very quick way to set up EDI style connections for sort of mass or static file transfers, which it becomes a very cost-effective way of creating integrations between systems. So this is something which we are increasingly rolling out and using. Perfect. So this brings me to the last part that I wanted to talk about, which is agentic AI. So at present, we have a purchase agent and we have a sales agent. So these are co-pilot agents. So agentic AI is becoming increasingly an important part of the future way that systems will work. And I wanted to highlight these two as the two we currently have available, but then talk a little bit more about how we envisage this changing in the future. So initially, I'm going to talk about the purchase agent and how this works. So these are linked up to an inbox. So if you have your finance mail inbox and you're receiving documents through, so it will pull that through. So here I've said, right, hi team, please find attached the invoice for last month's consultancy hours. This is pulling this through. I can see the PDF, everything which is sat within the system. And what this has done is this has come to me and it's prompted me. So that's its first step, as it said, we have this here, please confirm. So I've authorized the task. I've said, yep, that's absolutely fine. I recognize that, that's okay. The second step is it's then gone away, it's extracted the lines, and it has suggested a purchase document in draft, and it's asked me to check it. So you can increasingly automate this, but it's important that you're remaining in control, especially in the early stages of adopting something like agentic AI. It's also able to make suggestions. It's able to suggest which account it should use, and it can pick up it can pick up the fact that we have different tax as well, and split this off. But essentially, it's at a basic level, it's saying here is what we want. Again, we can always check back to the PDF and within this agent view at any point, making the process simpler. And then once this is finalized, then that produces our full-blown purchase invoice in our Business Central format, which when posted will then be able to, so if we've made any adjustments, so we can make adjustments if I'm just the VAT, for example, and once this is correct, it's automating through things like it's using posting groups to put it onto the right purchase ledger, it's using payment terms to ensure that we're calculating the due date correctly, and it's inputting as much information as it can, and it's asking me if I want to post that through. So this is quite a easy inbuilt way to process incoming purchase documents. It also doesn't require you to use any extensions because it's all within the base application. The other side, which I want to show now, is on the sales order agent. So the idea of this is being able to answer simple questions around sales. So if I've come and I've requested a quote for a new laminator, for example, it's then able to come back through. It's able to then send messages back. It's able to tell us what different items we've got, which ones are available, do you want more information, etc., etc. But one thing which is really clever is it actually has the ability of capable to promise. So once it's gone through, it's looking at item availability, it's checking when this will be ready to happen. So, and then at the end of that, we can then say the earliest shipment for the item which you require is actually, so this was back in December, so Monday the 8th of December. And this is based on the capable to promise capability in Business Central, which is looking at our purchases, our expected receipts, our lead times on certain items. And that can be both for items which we're buying in to then sell on, or items which we are manufacturing for sale as well. So actually through linking into that capable to promise, it's linking back through the system, it's linking back into the system logic and understanding planning and bringing all of that information instantaneously to an email, which we can then send on to out to our potential clients on this. So this is going to increasingly be a big part of the way that people use systems, the way that people manage operations. It's important that to a certain extent that we do keep the AI in its box though. We want to have these checks as shown down the right hand side. And also these agents do have, so if we have a look at the setup on this as well, so this is, we can say whether it's capable to promise or not. We can ask it to review orders. We can automate this a little bit more. But sat behind this, we view the agent to be a form of user, and that user has permissions assigned to it. So we can limit where the AI goes in the system. We can limit the information that it's accessing, and we can limit the operations which it's then carrying out, and the information is relayed back. So important, we are remaining in control as much as we possibly can. In the future, so Microsoft will build an expense agent. I think they will probably continue to build some more agents. They haven't revealed too much about this at this point, other than we know there's an expense management agent coming, which is greatly anticipated to help organizations who are currently using third-party software, using extensions to Business Central to process, say, documents or expenses. So then the purchase agent, the expenses agent can then take this over and intelligently process these requests coming through. We will also have the ability to create our own agents, which will be specific to our operational users. So I created one here, which is a payment journal agent assistant, and we can provide instructions in plain English to these agents, meaning that we don't need to have people who understand coding, who understand AI models. We ourselves are able to give the instructions to the agent in plain English, which will then go away, and we can then deploy these agents back into Business Central to carry out the allotted activities. But the advantage of this is, of course, if you're doing things which are specific to your organization, they'll be able to use any sort of your customization for bespoke code, and really get into your business processes and help automate those and assist the business as best they can. Okay, that takes us to the end of the product demonstration. If we could just switch back to the slides. So I'm just going to give us I've just got a quick slide on the wave releases. So as Lee mentioned earlier, we every single year we have two releases which come out from Microsoft. So this it kind of goes in line with this idea that it's an evergreen product. So Microsoft are obviously constantly looking at sort of fixing things and then bringing in these sort of minor releases which sort of focus on sort of potentially ongoing issues or enhancing small pieces of functionality, but twice a year they have these wave releases. And these are much anticipated in the Business Central community because this is when new functionality comes through, a functionality which extends the system and takes it beyond just the out-the-box capabilities. So it's important that we manage the rollout of these correctly, because we don't want any major updates or anything coming through to be untested or to interfere with any of your ongoing code, any of your ongoing processes. So Kik manage this. We proactively manage the rollout of these wave releases to all our clients, and we ensure that this doesn't happen and that you don't experience any operational disruption. So there were quite a few features coming out in the first wave of 2026. This is going to start from April, but these are some of the highlights that I've seen so far. So the AI workflow design is much like what I was just showing you, and we have the expenses agent, this ability to create our own agents. They're looking to bring in a form of supplier self-service, which is something Business Central to date hasn't had, and I think this can greatly improve supply chain visibility for your suppliers. Scenario planning with planning, budgeting, and forecasting. So it's great to see a focus going back onto the budgeting and forecasting capabilities, because this again, whilst it's not specifically a gap, Business Central does do budgeting and forecasting and powerful reporting against both of these comparisons. We haven't had scenario planning in the past. Improvements to the AI cash flow forecasting will just essentially continue to make it more accurate, continue to make it more reliable, and use AI increasingly to process the data which it has. And as discussed, further Power BI dashboards. They can bring in an audit dashboard, which I think would be really helpful, and an improved costing worksheet, which will allow us to cost in more complex ways. I hope you've enjoyed this Business Central demonstration. Of course, you can feel free to reach out to the team if you have more questions, or if you want to see more on specific bits of functionality. We're always willing to sit down with you and have a chat about stuff. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you have a lovely rest of the day. So I'll pass back to Lee at this point. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jax. That was great. Not real intuitive. A lot of nice stuff in there for to think about in terms of the AI, especially. I have one last slide, and just to let everyone know, those Navision customers, Business Central customers, there is incentives available from Microsoft. So Microsoft Cloud Upgrade incentives make it more affordable than ever to move to Business Central Cloud. There's specific discounts designed which will try to lower your subscription costs during the transition. There is different qualifying areas for this, so we advise you to speak to your Kik account manager, and they can talk you through how the incentives work and how you might qualify for them. Now we've got a few minutes left. There's quite a bit of information thrown at you there. In the top right hand corner there is a box with a question mark. If anyone wants to ask any questions, you can put in some questions now, or alternatively you can contact, as I said, your account manager, and we can run through any questions you might have. So I'll give it just a minute and see if anyone has any questions. No, there's nothing coming through just now. Okay, so well, thanks everyone for your time. I hope you found that enjoyable, got a lot out of that, and as I said, contact the account manager if you need to ask anything further. Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.